everybody. Thank you for coming to this series of the Cybersecurity Chat, coming to you from the Cyber Center for Education Innovation of the National Cryptologic Museum. We're located at Fort Meade, Maryland, just right outside of the NSA gate. And we're very happy today to welcome a Purdue University graduate, Mr. Blair Banker. He got his master's in business analytics and information management. It's really wonderful to have a recent grad give one of these talks, because for you high school students and who are looking at potentially going into this field, here is a great example of someone who has chosen cybersecurity. As we know, there's over 500,000 openings today that cannot be filled. All you need to do is go to cyberseek.org, cyberseek.org, and be able to determine how many jobs are available and where they're available. So we're really excited to have Blair with us today. And he has spoke to many key executives and decision makers regarding IT security solutions. And so he's here to provide his knowledge and what excites him about cyber. So Blair, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Lupker. I really appreciate that introduction. Just to start here, I'll probably share my screen and we'll just kind of dive right in. Today we'll be talking about trust and ethics in cybersecurity, and really just kind of covering cybersecurity in general. So the agenda today will cover an introduction, talk about some real-world impacts, different types of hackers, go over a few real-world examples, and why cybersecurity might be a great fit for you. First here, before we begin, did anyone catch the NASA and SpaceX launch here a few days ago?
Yes, I did. It was wonderful.
Yes, definitely a nice change of pace. But to kind of along those lines, so your mobile phone has more computing power than all of NASA in 1969. So at that time, NASA launched a man on the moon. However, nowadays, we launch birds into pigs. So without spending too much time on my soapbox here, you have so much information and so many great resources at your fingertips that I really encourage you to explore and just stay curious and keep learning. But with that said, what is cybersecurity? To boil it down into 3 words, it's protecting electronic data. And moving on here, so the CIA triad is really a framework for understanding information security, and includes confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So diving a little bit deeper into these, so confidentiality, and I know there are some $10 words on here, but so just to cover a few of these, you see here the anonymity, for those that are familiar. So the prevention tool of onion routing, is something like the Tor network, if anyone's familiar. And that $10 word there you see towards the bottom, steganography, is the hiding data in plain sight. So an example of this might be, some people are looking for, hidden secrets in Da Vinci's Mona Lisa. So that would be an example of steganography. The I of the CIA triad is integrity. That includes message integrity, source authentication, deduplication, and completeness. And the MAC there you see is message authentication code, which is a type security code that ensures that a message comes from stated sender, which is used for electric funds transfer. So I think most of us have used Venmo or different ways of transferring money here. And then also you see phishing on the screen, and that's something we'll visit later in the presentation, but it's actually one of the most common cyber attacks. So the A of the CIA triad is availability. And the best description of, or I guess before I dive in, is anyone familiar with DDoS or DOS?
Yeah, I think that's denial of service, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly right. And the best description I've heard of trying to describe denial of service is imagine an elephant that's being taken down by a swarm of bees. So you have a business's server, and the server can handle a number of transactions, and what happens is you have a bad actor that is either operating a botnet or it's a distributed denial of service where you have a lot of bad actors just repeatedly pinging that server until it ultimately crashes. So moving on to real world impacts here, how does cybercrime affect businesses? So according to the Council of Economic Advisors, malicious cyber activity cost the U.S. economy between $57 and $109 billion in 2016. Cyber attacks can also spill over into economically linked firms, further damaging a company's reputation and causing negative externalities, not only for companies, but for private citizens like you and me as well. Would anyone like to take a stab at the average cost of a cyber attack for a business?
It can really depend, but I would go, it would be definitely could be hundreds of thousands.
That's a great guess. So actually, according to IBM, in 2019, the cost was $3.9 million. So furthermore, it takes an average of 279 days to identify and contain a breach and 314 days from breach to containment. Moving on to how cybercrime affects people's daily lives. So here I like to kind of draw the analogy or compare security and privacy. And they're very related, but there are some important distinctions here. And I think that it's best described by an example. So let's say you're opening a bank account. So you call the bank, you say, hey, I'd like to open a checking account. So what happens after that? In the first scenario, the bank uses your information to open an account, goes on to protect your data, and there are no issues. Your privacy and security are intact. In the second scenario, the bank sells some of your information. So while your privacy is maybe compromised, your security is maintained. And the bank here may sell your information to a third party like a marketer, and it's usually legal and included in the privacy statement. But unfortunately, your personal information may end up in more hands than you'd like. In the third scenario here, both privacy and security are compromised. And here your information is stolen by bad actors and sold on the dark web. Your privacy is gone, and you may be a victim of cyber fraud and identity theft. Along those lines, has anyone here heard of Cambridge Analytica?
No, I haven't.
Oh, wow. So Cambridge Analytica actually had worked with Facebook and worked with political parties all over the globe to help influence elections by targeting Facebook users. It's really an interesting time right now because the advent of big data and machine learning are making it easier for companies to more intimately understand our preferences and beliefs. If you just think about how much information Facebook has on all of us, they really know us pretty intimately. And for certain machine learning techniques, they can identify authorship by analyzing text patterns. So this means your anonymous Reddit comment can be cross-referenced with other text on the web, and it can be linked to your digital identity. So just something to keep in mind. It really is a brave new world that we're moving into here. So moving on to different types of hackers. Now, there are a few different types of hats, but for simplicity, we'll just cover the basics here. Black and white hat hackers. There are also red hat hackers, green hat hackers, blue hats, and script kiddies. And if you're interested in that, we can cover those in the Q&A. But does anyone know the history of where these hats may come from?
I really don't know the history, but from NSA, I know how the information assurance director, when we were helping protect, were all white hatters.
Yes, that's exactly right. So the white and black hats actually have roots in the American West. So first we have the Lone Ranger, and for Those students, you may know him from the movie released in 2013, starring Johnny Depp and Armie Hammer. And next, we have a screenshot from the last scene of The Great Train Robbery, which is a silent film from 1903. And I actually watched the film. It's a little over 10 minutes long, and it's in the Library of Congress if you're interested. But it's pretty, kind of as an aside here, the film would actually go on to inspire works like James Bond, Goodfellas, and Breaking Bad, which I'm sorry, I know it's not very cybersecurity related, but I thought it was interesting, so I'd like to share it. So moving on here to ethical hacking. So what is ethical hacking? And I'll use ethical hacking and penetration testing interchangeably here moving forward. But an ethical hacker is someone hired to hack into a system to identify and repair potential vulnerabilities before malicious hackers can exploit the same vulnerabilities. And by pen testing, companies help ensure minimal security breach potential, therefore bolstering system availability. For those that remember, it is the A of the CIA triad. So there are a few different approaches to ethical hacking. There's white box, black box, and gray box, and I'll speak a little bit about each one. So these penetration tests can be performed either externally or internally to simulate different attack vectors. Depending on the goal of the test, the ethical hacker may or may not have prior knowledge of the environment and systems they're trying to compromise. This is categorized as white box, black box, and gray box penetration testing. With white box penetration testing, another name for internal penetration testing, the ethical hacker has full knowledge and access to the source code and environment. The goal here is to conduct a thorough security audit of businesses' systems and provide the ethical hacker with as much detail as possible. As a result, these types of tests are more in depth than the other two and frankly require a lot of trust in the ethical hacker. Companies in this scenario are essentially handing over the keys to their kingdom. So moving on to black box penetration testing is also known as the external pen testing. Here, the ethical hacker is given little to no information regarding the systems, applications, and databases. And the main benefit with this test is that it simulates a real-world cyber attack. And lastly, gray box penetration testing is a mix of external and internal penetration testing. So this means the ethical hacker has partial knowledge or access to an internal network or web application. And so interestingly, one of the fastest growing attack vectors relates to malicious insiders. These malicious insiders may be an employee, a third party, or anyone with network or application access. And a great example of this was Target settled a data breach for $18.5 million in 2017 that may have been prevented by an ethical hacker using a gray box approach. This is actually an example from my time as a cybersecurity executive where Target was breached via a third-party HVAC company. So in this example, a bad actor was able to obtain network credentials from the HVAC company and uploaded credit card stealing malware to a small number of point-of-sale cash registers in Target stores. And they were able to move laterally through their network after initially breaching their system. So now we'll kind of talk about some penetration testing types, and you'll see 6 types on your screen here. So there are a handful of different pen tests, including network, web application, client-side, wireless, social engineering, and physical penetration tests. Each type of pen test requires specific knowledge, methods, and tools. So starting with network pen testing, it's one of the most common types of ethical hacking performed. The main purpose is to identify the most exposed vulnerabilities across servers, firewalls, switches, routers, printers, workstations, and other devices connected to the network. Networks are absolutely critical for businesses, so these types of pen tests should be performed at least once a year, both externally and internally. Moving on to web application penetration testing. This is used to discover vulnerabilities in websites and other web-facing components like plugins. These types of pen tests are more complex and require the ethical hacker to have some pretty savvy technical skills. And to be effective, these tests have to identify every web-based aspect of a company that a user interacts with. These pen tests are directly related to the software application development. Moving on, client-side pen tests help identify weaknesses in client-side applications like email, web browsers, and for those of us that use Adobe Photoshop. Next, we have wireless penetration testing, which attempts to identify vulnerabilities relating to a company's Wi-Fi network. Now, can anyone give me some examples of some devices that are connected to a Wi-Fi network?
Almost everything in my house is connected to a Wi-Fi network.
That's right. So yeah, cell phones, tablets, laptops. And there's also another vector here that will have a huge role to play in the coming years, which is the Internet of Things. And going back to our CAI triad, a lot of these wireless attacks are based on confidentiality. Techniques that help secure these devices include encryption, access control, and information flow analysis. Next, we have social engineering penetration testing. And this is where a bad actor attempts to trick someone into giving them sensitive information. This vector we're all probably most familiar with. If you're like me, I received an email from a quote Nigerian prince that wanted to give me a few $1,000s. They just needed my social security number. For those of you that get emailed by a Nigerian prince, please do not give them your social security number. And this is also known as phishing, tying back to earlier in the presentation. And last but certainly not least, we have a physical penetration test. And there's a pretty funny story. I used to work with a physical pen tester, and he was hired by a warehousing company to break into their warehouse. So he arrives at the site at about 1 a.m., spends hours looking for a way into the building and just can't find any way in. And just before giving up, he sees this large rock just sitting on the ground, and he gets an idea. So he grabs the rock, goes to the side of the building, smashes the rock through the window, and enters the building. The alarms go off, and he sat and waited for the police to arrive, timing their response time. And the next day in the report recommended that the company install shatterproof glass. So just a kind of a funny example there from the field, but so we made it. I'm sorry for the long slide, but we'll move on. So here we have a real world, and I'll dive in a little bit deeper into this one that I did with Target, and it is the 2017 Equifax breach. So this actually happened while I was an cybersecurity executive, and for those unaware, Equifax is an American multinational consumer credit reporting agency. And in September of 2017, they announced a breach almost 5 months after they discovered it on their system. Cyber criminals obtained roughly 150 million customers' personal data, including full names, social security numbers, birth dates, addresses, and driver's license numbers. Furthermore, Equifax confirmed over 200,000 additional customers' credit card information was stolen. Hackers remained on their system undetected for about 76 days. Equifax paid $650 million to settle with the Federal Trade Commission and an additional $77.5 million to consumers that were affected by the breach. Now, that's a lot of money, but that wasn't really my biggest takeaway. The most interesting part of the breach is that Equifax was aware of the patch. It was deemed critical over 2 months before the bad actors breached their networks. And I think this really highlights just how badly we need additional cybersecurity professionals in the field. And to kind of segue into why cybersecurity? Why might cybersecurity be a good fit for you? And to begin, cybersecurity roles have a real-world impact. With cybersecurity, you can be sure that the work you're doing is helping make the world a better, safer place. And I've yet to meet someone that can argue with that. Next, the cybersecurity field is growing. In 2017, the cybersecurity market was worth $173 billion. And by 2026, the industry is forecasted to be worth $270 billion. Furthermore, if you like the idea of working on new and interesting problems every single day, cybersecurity is a great fit. And lastly, and this has been true for me, you don't necessarily need a technical background to be an effective cybersecurity professional. I like to joke that I majored in basketball in college, and I really had no intention of entering the cybersecurity field. I stumbled into the industry after working in it as an investment advisor and assisting clients for being hacked. And for anyone interested, I urge you to Google Brian Krebs. Brian is one of the figureheads in cybersecurity, like Mr. Lepker. And, like myself, he did not have a technical background. He majored in international studies and wasn't interested in cybersecurity until a Chinese hacking group overran his home network. And that really concludes my presentation here. I have my sources, but I'd like to thank everyone for their time, and we'll open it up now for a Q&A, but I really appreciate everyone's time.
We do have a question. You explained that you really never even thought about getting into this profession. Could you dive a little bit deeper into that event or that particular problem that caused you to be aware of cybersecurity and drove you to this interest?
So like I said, I worked as an investment advisor, and I managed individual retirement accounts along with retirement plans. And so we had a few clients, and this happened relatively frequently over my tenure. And just working with these clients through the hack and just seeing just how many unknowns surrounded IT security and their information being compromised, really kind of catalyzed my interest in the field. And, it's one of those things where, you learn one thing and it makes you want to learn another thing. And then it just kind of snowballs until you find yourself at 2 a.m. in one of the deeper recesses of Wikipedia that you never thought you'd be. And it's just fascinating to me that, the systems and the networks that we've built are, frankly, and Mr. Lepker, maybe you can speak to this, but in my experience, a lot of the systems and networks and applications I see are, pretty vulnerable. And that was another, kind of point of information that, inspired me just to keep learning more. And then that eventually, kind of inspired me to start looking for jobs in the IT security industry. And I found a company in Chicago that, was an IT security managed security services provider. And, they really kind of took the onus of IT security away from the businesses, and they really kind of had a comprehensive, holistic strategy for managing IT security. And that was really what sold me was, as I know, obviously everyone's, really busy, and IT security, kind of falls to the back of a lot of people's minds. So, when I saw some of the managed security offerings, I just knew that that's where I wanted to work.
Great answer. Do we have any other questions from the folks on the call today?
What are some things that high school students can do, that are in their early high school years, their freshman and sophomore years? What can they start to do to learn more about cybersecurity?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, first and foremost, I just think, if this is a topic that you're interested in, just pursue that curiosity. Everyone that I work with in the cybersecurity field that, really enjoys their work and is passionate about their work, those are the individuals that end up doing a great job and, go the extra mile in securing and preventing cybercrime. So without that passion, without that curiosity, and frankly, this message won't resonate with every student. But for those that are interested, I just really implore you to chase that curiosity and just keep learning. It's just I really think, present days, you need to have a lifelong learning mentality. And, without that, I'm not sure if cybersecurity is the right field for you. Really, the number one thing I would offer high school students is just to continue just seeking out whatever you're curious about, and just keep learning.
Great answer, by the way, and it's one of the things we share with students as well. Cyber is so vast and it has so many different other attributes that are centered on exactly what you said: curiosity, wanting to learn, a lifelong learning. Because I will validate for you that over the many years I've been doing cybersecurity under its many earlier names of computer security, information assurance. This is just the latest in the terminology shift. It's all about continued learning. Do we have any other questions?
You don't need a technical background is not needed in this. And so I know when I was teaching web design and somebody showed me a code, it was foreign to me and it was strange. But then when I got in, it did make sense. But to me, it seems like the students that have that technical drive will be leaning towards this. So how do you maybe promote or say that you don't need this technical aspect of it to the students?
So I kind of think about technical, and I'm not sure if you're on the same page here, but a lot of programming and coding. But there are also, and Mark, this might be a better question for you, but you can be a lot more high level in the field than I think most people realize. So if you're able to look at, say a network diagram and, maybe identify some potential issues with that network, network architecture, and I want to, pass this off to Mr. Lepker again. I know that there are a few roles in IT security that don't require that, incredibly granular technical expertise, where you can be a little bit more high level and understand the big picture a little bit better and be able to, offer a strategy and a roadmap to a more secure security posture for your business or even your personal life.
Yeah, I'll echo what you said there, Blair, because it is true that there are many aspects of cybersecurity professional opportunities that don't require that extreme in-depth computer security technical knowledge. In fact, one of the career fields that I speak about to our high school population is we need library science. And many of the kids will get just confused about library science. Well, if you think about what is taught in library science, it is the organization and curation and management of books, of information. Well, what is a big data store? It is nothing more than that. It is an organization of data, but to be able to curate it, access it, be able to present it when needed, etc. And so it's more of a library science than it is a computer security science around it. And that begins to open their minds that there are many different ways of getting into cybersecurity from all the different avenues. It's a very robust profession and can be approached to forensics. Investigative sciences are very important. English, many times the technical writing aspect of this profession requires people who know how to succinctly write and convey complex concepts in a very simple way. And sometimes the computer geeks, I'm kind of in that environment, don't know how to communicate. And so we need communicators. And so it's a very broad science, a very broad profession. So Blair, you're exactly right. You don't always need that deep technical knowledge. Well, Blair, hearing none, I really want to thank you. Well, one last parting thing. What's next for you?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, so I'm a recent grad. Unfortunately, I was not anticipating COVID-19. So to be totally honest, I'll go whoever wants to take me, I'll go. But I really am, really interested in IT security, and hopefully an opportunity opens up. But just to be honest, it's the job market right now is pretty tight.
Yeah. Are you on LinkedIn?
I am.
Cool. That's a great place to be. A lot of folks are there, and so just keep pursuing, et cetera, on LinkedIn and making those connections, because it's all about networking, not only in the IT sense but in the human sense.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
Well, Blair, thank you for being with us today. It was great to learn that you're a fellow Hoosier and coming from my same hometown. So that was a real pleasure to learn that today. Thank you for sharing your insight. Thank you for everyone who joined us today. And that is the end of today's series. So please continue to look at our website on either Nepris or our National Cryptologic Museum Foundation website for future talks in our cybersecurity chat series. With that, we bid you adieu and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lepker. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you, everybody. All right, y'all have a good afternoon.
All right, thank you.
Bye.